the most powerful man in the world, woke up most mornings not wanting to get out of bed. We know this because he wrote it down. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, commander of the largest army on earth, a man who could have anything, lay in bed in the morning and had to talk himself into rising, the same way you do. What he did in the first hour of his day is the reason he's remembered 2,000 years later, while the emperors who lived for pleasure are forgotten. And none of it requires you to be an emperor, or wealthy, or disciplined in a way you're not already capable of. Here's how the most stable mind in the ancient world started his day. The morning routine has become a modern obsession, and mostly a broken one. Open any feed and you'll find the 5 a.m. cold plunge, the 17-step regimen, the influencer whose entire personality is their morning. It's become performance. A checklist of optimizations that, for most people, produces guilt rather than calm. One more thing to fail at before 8 a.m. The research on what actually matters in the morning is much simpler than the content suggests. What you do in the first hour shapes the psychological tone of the entire day, not because of cold water or specific supplements, but because of one thing: whether you begin the day in a reactive state or a deliberate one. Most people wake up and immediately hand their mind to external input. The phone, the news, the emails that accumulated overnight. Before they've had a single thought of their own, they've absorbed 100 of someone else's. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world without phones, but he understood the principle exactly. The court, the dispatches, the demands of empire, they would consume his entire mind the moment he let them in. So he built a practice to claim the day before the day could claim him. It wasn't 17 steps. It was 4 ideas, and they're recorded in his own words, in the Meditations. The first thing Marcus did was not gratitude, and not visualization of success. It was something far more useful and far less comfortable. He prepared for the day to be difficult. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. This is the most misunderstood line in the Meditations. It sounds pessimistic. It's the opposite. Marcus was inoculating himself. By anticipating difficulty before it arrived, he removed its ability to ambush him. When the ungrateful colleague showed up, the arrogant senator, the dishonest advisor, he wasn't thrown because he'd already met them in his mind that morning. The modern version of this is powerful precisely because it's counterintuitive. We're taught to start the day with positivity, to imagine everything going well. But the day rarely goes entirely well, and when it doesn't, the gap between expectation and reality produces frustration. Marcus reversed it. Expect friction. Expect that some things will go wrong, some people will be difficult, some plans will fail. Then, when they do, you respond from preparation instead of surprise. And when the day goes better than your sober expectation, which it often does, you experience it as a gift rather than a baseline. The practice. In the first few minutes of your day, briefly run through the hard parts ahead. The difficult meeting. The conversation you're dreading. The task you've been avoiding. Don't catastrophize. Just acknowledge. Decide in advance how the best version of you would handle each one. You've now met the day before it meets you. The second thing Marcus did was answer a question most people never ask. Why get up at all? He wrote one of the most relatable passages in all of ancient philosophy, the Emperor of Rome arguing with himself about staying in bed. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work, as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? This is not a productivity hack. It's a confrontation with purpose. Marcus reminded himself every morning that he existed to do something, to contribute, to act according to his nature, to be useful to the whole he was part of. The bed was comfortable. The work was hard. But the work was the point of being alive, and the comfort was just the absence of the point. He went further, almost mocking himself. So you were born to feel nice? Instead of doing things and experiencing them? Don't you see the plants, the birds, the ants and spiders and bees going about their individual tasks, putting the world in order as best they can, and you're not willing to do your job as a human being. The practice: before you rise, answer the question, what am I getting up for? Not the to-do list. The actual reason. The contribution you're here to make, the people who depend on you, the work that is yours to do. When the reason is clear, the rising is easier. When it's absent, no amount of cold water will fix it. The third principle is the one most directly opposed to how modern mornings work. Marcus's first input of the day came from inside himself, from reflection, from his own values, from the philosophy he'd internalized, not from the outside world. The meditations themselves are evidence of this. They're not a book written for an audience. They're a private morning practice. Marcus writing to himself, reminding himself of his principles before the empire's demands could crowd them out. He was, in effect, downloading his own values into his mind first thing so that everything that came after would be filtered through them. In modern terms, he didn't check his notifications before he checked in with himself. The contrast with the average modern morning is total. Most people's first conscious act is to reach for the phone, to absorb the night's accumulation of other people's thoughts, demands, and emergencies. By the time they have their first original thought, they're already reacting to a dozen inputs they didn't choose. Marcus's practice protected the most valuable cognitive real estate of the day, the first clear hour for his own mind. The practice: delay external input. Give yourself even 15 minutes between waking and the first notification. In that window, do what Marcus did. Connect with your own values, your own intentions, your own thoughts about the day. Write, sit, think, or simply move through your morning without the input stream. The phone will still be there. The world will still be there. But you'll meet it as yourself, not as a reaction. This single change, first input from within, not without, is the closest thing to Marcus Aurelius's actual morning that a modern person can practice. So let's go back to where we started. The most powerful man in the world woke up not wanting to get out of bed. What separated him wasn't that he felt more disciplined, or more motivated, or more naturally inclined to rise. He felt exactly what you feel. He wrote it down so we'd know. What separated him was 3 practices, done in the first hour, before the world got its hands on him. He prepared for the day to be hard, so it couldn't ambush him. He reminded himself why he was rising at all, so the comfort of the bed couldn't win the argument. And he took his first input from within himself, his own values, his own mind, before he allowed in a single demand from outside. None of that requires an empire. None of it requires waking at 5 a.m. or plunging into ice. It requires 15 minutes and a decision, to begin the day deliberately instead of reactively. The emperor who did this is remembered as one of the wisest men who ever lived. The emperors who woke up and reached immediately for pleasure, for distraction, for the noise of the day, history doesn't even remember their names. Tomorrow morning, before the phone, before the noise, take the first hour back. That's the whole routine. If this gave you something to use tomorrow, subscribe. Every week, one practice from the ancient world that still works in this one. They had more time to think than we do. We might as well use it.